Okay. Thank you for being present, to the ones that are here in the room and the ones that are following us from on the Zoom line. To start this afternoon's program, we are going to present the talk, Reinventing the Learning, from Diana Maggio, who is Director of Masters in Educational Technology from the University of Buenos Aires, a member of the Committee of Quality of Education. And Magdalena Claro is going to be leading the conversation. She is Director of VAN for the well-being of teenagers and children in the digital era. Please. Thank you. Mariana Maggio is Doctor in Education, Master in Didactics, License in Science of Education in the University of Buenos Aires. Right now, she is teacher in the Department of Science of Education and also Director of the career of the Quality of Education in Argentina. She is also responsible of Latin America's of Microsoft in the academic department.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon.
Es un gusto enorme
It's
para
a
mí
big
ser parte de
pleasure
este summit
to be part of
en
this
una
summit
institución
in
que
an
admiro
institution
tan
that I
profundamente como es
admire
la Pontificia
deeply,
Universidad Católica de Chile.
like the
Quiero agradecer
Pontificia
a la
Universidad
organización por
Católica de
tenerme
Chile.
acá,
Thank you for the
especialmente
organization
a la
for being here.
vicerrectora de
Thank you
Inteligencia
to the
Digital,
Vice
Paula
Dean,
Aguirre, que fue
Paula
quien me extendió
Aguirre,
en primer
that
lugar
was the
la
one
invitación.
who invited
Y quiero
me.
decir que también es un gusto
And
grande
it's also
compartir
a
este
big pleasure
espacio
to share
con
this
mi querida
space
Magdalena
with
Claro, con
Magdalena
quien
Claro,
tenemos un diálogo
with whom
abierto.
we
Creo que
have
a esta
an
altura se puede
open
decir a lo largo
dialogue
de las décadas,
through
tremendo.
the decades.
Voy a hacer una presentación
I'm
que
going
tiene que
to
ver
do
con
a
un título
presentation that has to
que
do
me propuso la
with
organización del
something
Summit
that the
y que
organization of the
agradezco
summit
mucho porque me tuvo en un enero
proposed to me, and
intenso
I really
reflexionando sobre estas
thank,
cuestiones.
because
Son
I have
temas
been
en los que
reflecting
trabajo
in these
en la
topics.
Universidad de Buenos
I'm
Aires, en la
working
Facultad
with
de
these
Filosofía y
issues
Letras desde hace
in
casi
the
4 décadas.
University of Buenos Aires
Pero que
for almost
en
4
esta
decades.
vuelta de tuerca
But
que
in
ofrece la invitación, nos
this
lleva a pensar
invitation,
cuál es el
thought,
desafío de
what's the
seguir
challenge
siendo
of
humanos en
continue
este
to be humans
momento
right
en el
now,
que estamos todos tan
where
atrapados
we
de alguna
are
manera
trapped in
en
a
el
way
debate
in the
respecto de la
debate
inteligencia artificial
about
generativa y su relación
generative
con la
AI
educación.
and its relationship
Para
to education.
empezar, quiero
start,
contarles,
I would
compartir
like
con
to
ustedes
tell you, to
respecto a lo
share
que es
with
la
you
primera parte de la
about the
definición del
first
tema de
part
la
of the
presentación, que es la
definition of the
reinvención de la
presentation,
enseñanza,
Reinventing
que en el año
the
2018
teaching,
publiqué
that
en
in
Argentina, en Editorial
2018
Paidós, un libro que tiene
published a
por
book,
título Reinventar la
that
clase
has
en la universidad.
as title, Reinvent the
Y
University
quiero
Lessons.
señalar
And I would like
que
to
la
say
convicción
that
respecto de que
the
teníamos que empezar a
conviction
pensar en términos de
of
reinvención
reinventing
me la trajo a mí, que venía de la
gave to
tecnología
me
educativa del
that
siglo
came
pasado,
from the education from
una
the
suerte
previous
de
century,
comprensión de lo que estaba
a
sucediendo
comprehension of what
ya
was
en este
happening
siglo,
in
y
this
voy a decir
century.
respecto de este punto,
And I'm going to say about
los
this
primeros
point,
15 años
the
del
first
siglo,
15
en
years
términos
of
de
the
las tendencias
century,
culturales
in the
emergentes.
emerging
habíamos
cultural trends.
entrado
We
al siglo
had
XXI con el
started
punto de
the
inflexión
21st
que
century
trae
with an inflection
la
point
sociedad
that was
red,
given
al decir de Manuel
with the
Castells, o la era de la
societies of
información,
network or the era
esa
of
que él define
information
como omnipresencia de las
that,
tecnologías de la información
that
y la
he says is
comunicación en
an
nuestras vidas.
omnipresence of the communications in
En
our
esa época yo
lives.
ya hacía
At that
investigación
time, I
acerca de las
was
prácticas de la
already doing
enseñanza
research in the
y una de las cosas que
learning,
noté en primer
teaching
lugar es
practices.
que
And
los
something that I
docentes
noted
que
was that
abrazaban
the professors
específicamente
that
Internet
embraced
en
specifically
la
Internet
construcción de sus
in the
clases
building
eran
of
los
their
que
lessons
reconocían
were the ones that
la trama
recognized
epistemológica
the
que se estaba
epistemology
moviendo, lo que empezaba a
net
pasar
that
con
was
Internet
happening, what was happening
respecto de
on
la
the Internet
construcción del
respect the,
conocimiento disciplinar.
the
Eran docentes que
construction
en ese
of
momento decían, pero yo ya no
the
investigo
discipline.
igual.
They
O yo
were
ya
saying,
no
I
diseño
don't
igual.
research or
O yo
design
ya
in the
no hago
same
las
way, or
prácticas de
I don't do
laboratorio
the
de la
lab
misma
practices in
manera.
the same way.
Ahí hay un primer
There
movimiento
is a first
que me
movement
lleva a pensar,
that
bueno, si
leads me to think,
están teniendo lugar estas
if
transformaciones
these
epistemológicas, ¿cómo seguiríamos
epistemologic
enseñando igual?
transformations
Pero
are taking place,
ya
how are we
hacia
going,
la
why are
segunda
we
mitad
teaching
de
in
la
the same
segunda
way?
década,
But
también fue
in the
posible reconocer
second
que
part of
teníamos en
the
nuestras aulas
decade,
un
the second
sujeto
decade,
distinto.
I realized
Michel
that
Serres habló de
Michel Serres
pulgarcita,
said
un
that
estudiante que
in
tiene otra
the
cabeza
classrooms
porque
there
está
were
todo el
something
día moviendo
special,
los
maybe
pulgares, por eso la llamó
Thumbelina.
pulgarcita en
He
su
called them
dispositivo.
Thumbelina because
Y
they
dice
were
de
always
pulgarcita,
using
no
their
quiere
thumbs.
escuchar el libro
And
dicho,
she didn't
no
want to
quiere
hear.
esto,
She didn't want this.
no le interesa.
She's
Sabe
not
que el
interested.
conocimiento ya
She
está
knows
ahí,
that the
que
knowledge
lo va a
is already
encontrar
there.
cuando lo
Is
vaya a
going
buscar.
to find it when she needs it.
Transformaciones
She's going to look for it.
epistemológicas,
Epistemological
transformaciones
transformations,
en términos de la
cultural
subjetividad de quienes
transformations
educamos,
from
y
the
también
ones that we
otras
educate,
transformaciones
and
que venían
other
de la mano
transformations
de
that
las
came
nuevas
hand in hand with
narrativas,
new
lo que nos
narratives.
trae en términos de la
What
cultura
brings
digital,
us the
el mundo de
digital
los
culture,
videojuegos,
the
de
world
las
of
series de televisión,
video games, TV
empiezan
series
a atravesarnos
that
relatos
start
que
to
ya no
bring us
tienen eso que mi
narratives
maestra
that
Edith Litwin denominó la
don't
secuencia
say,
lineal
they don't
progresiva.
have a
Primero esto, después esto,
consecutive
después
line,
esto.
first this,
Mundos en
then
los que
that,
podemos
then that.
saltar en el tiempo,
Worlds where we
cambiar de
can
lugar,
jump in time,
cambiar de
change of
estación,
place,
navegar
station,
virtualmente.
virtually
Estos no son
navigate.
emergentes de este
These are
momento,
not
son
emerging.
emergentes que ya explotaron en las
They
aulas hace
already
muchísimo
exploded
tiempo.
in the classrooms a
Y,
long time
como dicen
ago.
Brimstone y
And
McAfee,
as
también la fuerza de las
Grimson and
aplicaciones
McAfee also
combinadas,
said that
¿no?
the
De
applications
repente,
combined.
ustedes en este momento alguien está
Sometimes
sacando una
maybe
foto,
you are
esa
taking
foto
a
la sube
picture,
a
that
X,
picture
alguien la
is
levanta de
uploaded
X, la
somewhere
pone en una
on
presentación que va a
X,
ser
and
en
then
otro
a
lugar.
person takes that
Algo de
photo
lo que
from X
empieza
and is using
a
it for a
aparecer que
presentation.
tiene, podríamos decir,
Something
otras
is
lógicas.
appearing that it has
Mi
other
posición
logics.
respecto a este
My
tema fue,
position
nosotros tenemos
about
que
this
reinventar la clase en la universidad. Si queremos
topic
ser
is that we need to
contemporáneos, si
reinvent the
queremos ser
classes
relevantes
in
y si queremos ser
universities if we want to be
inclusivos.
inclusive, contemporary.
Lo primero que advertí
The
cuando
first
hice
thing
ese
that I
movimiento
realized when I did that
es que a medida que
is
nosotros
that
íbamos trabajando en
when we
nuestras
started
clases con las tendencias
working
culturales
in our classes
emergentes,
with
íbamos construyendo
emerging
algunas categorías de
cultures,
análisis que
we
nos
started some
permitían decir,
analysis
trabajamos con
categories
escenarios online,
that allow us to
offline,
say
damos
we
cuenta
are
de estas
working online,
narrativas
offline.
alteradas,
There are
hacemos
some
codiseño
altered
con los
narratives. We are doing
estudiantes,
co-design
las
with
tendencias
students.
culturales
The
seguían
trends
cambiando.
in
Y hablé
the
entonces de
cultural
hacer
trends
didáctica
were
en vivo,
changing.
que
So
es estar
I
casi
thought
como en un
about doing
movimiento de alerta
live
permanente. ¿Y ahora qué va a venir?
didactics.
¿Y ahora qué va a pasar?
So now what's going to
Lo que
happen?
vino
What's going to
fue
come next?
muy intenso,
What
¿no?
came was very
Yo
intense.
En el año 2019
In 2019,
hablaba con mi equipo
I talked with
y les
my
decía
team and I
respecto de
said
este devenir de
about
las
these,
tendencias culturales,
about what's happening with
ojo,
cultural
miremos con mucho
trends.
cuidado, por ejemplo,
Be careful.
el
Let's.
planteo de Alessandro Barico,
What
que
Alessandro
decía,
Barico said,
señalaba en
he
su
said
libro de
in
gaming,
his
estamos
game book,
atravesando una revolución
we are
mental.
crossing
Una
a
revolución mental
mental
que tiene
revolution,
dos
a mental
motores
revolution that
en la
has
realidad,
two
uno
motors,
físico y uno
one in
virtual.
reality
Donde lo
and a virtual
exclusivamente
one,
físico, como
where
experiencia,
what's
ya no da
exclusively
cuenta de la realidad en la
physical,
que
it's not
vivimos.
showing the reality where we
Y mi
live.
pregunta, como
And my
tecnóloga
question
educativa, habiéndome
as
dedicado a la
educational
educación a distancia
technology,
prácticamente desde que empecé mi carrera,
and
era,
since I
¿estamos
started my
logrando
career,
capturar esto en
is
nuestras
are we
clases?
capturing this in our
Bueno, llegó la
classrooms, in our
pandemia.
classes? And then
De
the
la que el
pandemic
mismo
started.
Alessandro Barico
And
dijo
Alessandro Barico said, it's the myth, the narrative that we need to understand, that we needed to understand the mental revolution. In 2022, I published Hybrid, and I taught in classroom something that we didn't see coming. In a university, we could say we need to continue to redesign clearly in this situation of hybrid situation that leaves the pandemic generalized in a physical and mental way. And so we need to take a leap forward where we're going to recognize that we are hybrid. And then, so we need to teach in the same way. It was 2022, but this was not going to stop. And in November of 2022, I think you remember of HAL 9000 from the Odyssey, Space Odyssey in 1968, something that we knew was coming, which is a way, more amicable way of AI in the face of AI, generative AI. Our colleague, Argentine colleague, Costa, she said that pandemic was a global accident. Gerardi said that it was mutation, where we left it different. She says the same thing about generative AI. An era change in future centuries. We are going to find traces of what we're living today. And we have the challenge to design between accidents. About this, I would like to say that our universities, we have international experiences that talk about a certain heterogeneous response in the recognition of the accident, where there are universities like this one that we are sitting on, the Catholic University, that gave an exemplary example of the beginning of AI, generative AI, but even though faces a movement that in some ways is overwhelming us. This is a lot faster than what we can stand. There's a time thing. There is a speed up. Things are going a lot faster than the response skills that the organizations have, not only universities. This morning, Jose Canilla said, let's look at the private sector because they react faster, but not always. Sometimes, yes. This time, with these accidents, with this speed, brings us something like a hacking. And this hacking is hitting us where we didn't expect, at least where I didn't expect it. So we need to redesign our proposals, our educational practices. But this hacking, with the level of adoption, general adoption, today they told us data about a generational AI in the student groups. We are in a situation of emergency. And when we are in these type of situations, you're not going to say, this is not for me, and I want to hide or escape in a position that determination. But this is talking to us as professors, university professors. Many times we avoided many situations when it came to the internet, but I don't think this is the time for that. I don't think we can ignore the do or the say. These are news from different parts of the world that talk about this hacking and that talk about our answers. Take a sheet because more teachers are going back to the written exams. The students are asking new ways of evaluation. Cheating in university with ChatGPT, how to avoid a lack of integrity. Allow me an example of a different level from the educational level. I think Magdalena is going to like it. Some colleagues are telling me from preschool, these exercises that are very habitual, imagine how the little ones can do it. And the teachers say, and the little ones say, just ask ChatGPT. We are talking about preschool. And I think, I'm just going to say a hypothesis, that all this is happening. I'm going to say it in this way. Because we were scarce of redesigns, because many of what we are still doing in the level, more than designing between accidents, it's a little artificial from the point of view of the knowledge.
It looks a lot like what artificial intelligence, artificial intelligence can resolve today. It has to do with the comprehension that is so important of knowing that has been under before this happens, with the conservation of that legacy, with verification of the possibility of applying it in a linear way. That's why it can be resolved with generative AI. And that is why we are coming back to the oral test. This position is basically getting from the classical, beyond what has happened in the last 25 years, to be able to get to know previous knowledge before the disruption, and after the generalization of the cell phones and now AI in our lines. And to show a little bit, I am going to take one book as a reference of an Spanish intellectual philosopher who wrote a critical theory of AI, Daniel Iribariti, and he says regarding Gen AI, it obtains its power from what is available on internet. They feed themselves from something that already exists and cannot generate novelty. Its generation does not mean that they generate new knowledge, but they summarize and give us things that already exist. They learn looking back. The algorithms, the more they learn, they don't have their own idea of what they're learning. It's a group of great techniques to learn from the memory of the world. It cannot be that our position between knowledge in the university can be a group of ideas that we can learn from. So the question is, and the question that I want to share with you, in this search, it's not necessarily that we tension this idea that has been affecting us the last few years, that has to do with the use, with learning how to use, to be able to create a prompt and make it more effective, to be able to learn how to take more advantage of it, to learn that this solution of AI is not the same as this other solution, and evaluate the differences. I think this idea of use behind it has a paradigm that we could say that is connected with what is useful, with saving time, efficiency, productivity, which is fine. We all want to improve our lives, our quality of life, by being more efficient, but that cannot be the only destination of our training or preparation. So we go back to the question, what is human? And I would like to stop here for a moment. I think that we need to be able to work a lot in capturing what is brought to the contemporary scenario with this generative AI, and this is in the core of the training of our students to recognize the disciplinary differences, as we have mentioned before, but also to be able to work on the human, and in the presence of that which is still specific of our view regarding education and the world. So I think that the first to be able to identify is that we need to understand that AI in general, the general one and also the generative one, is basically a complex object going beyond knowing how to use it. What does its logic mean? What does it mean to have this work through synthetic connections? What are the biases that are used with the patterns that are being used? What are the probabilities in terms of connections that are carried out through the words? What does that mean? What does that mean regarding its construction? I think it is an obligation that has this sense of urgency for us as academics, teachers, researchers, and even for our students. And I think that beyond the comprehension of the object, we need to think about the human. Some time ago, Jose Camilla spoke regarding the abilities of the 21st century, where we are probably still in debt. But while we are still talking there are cognitive capabilities that become different regarding the interaction with generative AI. The problem, for example, how much time are we dedicating to take a look at our disciplines and the world through our disciplines with new questions that are original through the emerging challenges, taking on the problems that come up, for example, regarding things that have to do with the environmental crisis connected to energy issues that come up in this acceleration time. So what happens to us with analytical training from the point of view of what criteria is AI using that usually is not very transparent, and from what criteria can we think about it? This is a question that we ask in the university, probably since I've been a teacher. But every time they affirm something, I say, from what criteria? Because we want them to reach an expert knowledge that belongs to the discipline at a moment of history. And in that interface is what we need to work on. Howard Gardner had an anticipation that was very interesting regarding intelligence of the future, and he talked about synthetic intelligence. Today, synthetic is probably the best resolved by AI, and we need to rethink in terms of intelligence that may not be only analytical, it's meta-analytical, because it operates over criteria that has to be deconstructed and reconstructed. So what happens with the distinction? Bourdieu talked about the distinction in the construction of the good taste as something that is their own of those who have more cultural capital. What happens today with cultural capital regarding the disciplinary and that which has to do with AI? I asked Gemini yesterday, and it said that the difference, that distinction is going to have to do with that we can have a sophisticated use or simple and total instrumental use. But it depends on our cultural capital, and that we can educate in our students what we can educate in them. So what happens with the editing? Jorge Carrion sustains in an exercise that he carries out literary experimentation with AI, that one of the things that we need to learn to do is to edit the results of AI with our eyes, with our filters, with our principles, with our values, with our likes. How much time are we giving to this as a new path that we need to cross? And to finish, and to not leave this paradox in my life, many times I thought together with my students, and I affirmed, you are answering from common sense. And I want you to de-articulate this, and I want you to answer as an expert from the discipline. And one of the things today that appears as a difference regarding what AI does and what we do as humans is to be able to act with common sense. Common sense. As a doctor who looks at an image of a pregnant woman where he sees a bruise in a specific context, he can assume that there is gender violence. That is something that is still left, and it is left unless we allow AI to suction us, and that we need to see regarding its replication. In this sense, I would like to escape. I want to escape to the idea that we can turn into a replica, or that we can find one. I think if there is something that we need to guarantee today in terms of higher education, is that the constructions that we create be original. Of course, that they can be original, made as a collective, which is the way that we build knowledge at this time, but also with AI. That it can be constructions that are alive, that can open up new questions, and that they not be necessarily easy to respond with AI. And in this construction of the original, we also have to find the place of our body, because in this time of screens, where many times we are concentrated and still, and now what we have left as humans is our body, and the presence is not so clear of our bodies performing and moving and going from one place to another in the scenario of the classrooms. How do we do this? As my dear friend Lila Pinto says, it has to do with the design. We have to be able to enter into the practice of teaching, thinking that what we did before is not enough, and understand this and experiment all the classes and everything, and to make our own conclusions once we have documented what happens, and to make decisions regarding what yes and what no. And there is a redesign that has to do with being inclusive at this time, and the other side is our students, to make the experience be worth it. Because why are they going to be in our classrooms? Why? Because something happens that is different than what they can apply in their transect, that are personalized, and with the brilliant tutors. That what do we build in human for those who want to come up? There is an anticipation. I think that something happened to us throughout these 25 years, where we always come late, we come after, and we understand the accident when we are inside, and it has us in a machine that doesn't stop. And the question is, how can we get there before? You can say that you can have good anticipation looking at science fiction, and for science fiction at this time, it looks very dark. We have dystopic worlds, catastrophes, that is very dictatorships, and things that concern us. So now, to close and to be able to talk with Magdalena, I think that the most human that we can have today is teaching focused on changing the world, in thinking in terms of that anticipation, and to think what we are going to do with these possibilities, that to be able to co-construct, to be able to have a world that has peace guaranteed, and where the democracy is not hacked, that it can be inclusive, empathetic, and equitative. And I think this is there can be equity, and I think that this is something that we need to talk about in the universities, and to stop thinking maybe so much about what is useful and recover our possibility of thinking, imagining and dreaming with a more fair world. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mariana. We have around 10 minutes. They asked us to finish at 3:05. I would just like to say that it is a pleasure to hear you speak from a view that is very expert to look at teaching and technology. You always bring concepts that are very human, that allow us to reflect and take a distance of this area that we are in, and this distance, critical distance, and in this focus on human that you have mentioned today. I think that we are in a sensation where we always have this idea that we are with this focus, as you say, on being useful, that no doubt is a contribution. AI can help us save time, for example, and save on tasks, so we can dedicate more to the human. But we are not reaching that because we are always in this career. So from that reflection, and we were also talking a little bit with Mariana regarding this sensation of being in this reflection for many years, starting with from internet, and as you said, Ask ChatGPT as a great response. Before it was Ask Google or Saint Google. It was something that we would say because it would resolve all the problems. And from that time, we are saying we need to rethink the classroom. We need to, our relationship has changed with knowledge, and especially with the students. From their daily practices, they disconnect from the different way with information, with knowledge, and here you have brought on many ideas that are suggest regarding where to focus and from concepts of which we can grab onto when we go back into the classroom. And I know that it's not easy, but to try to help us, why were we not able to do so? We went through a pandemic that put everything on pause, everything that we understood that was not working so well, and then we dared to question it, but somehow we have this difficulty to redesign, rethink, and to think about starting over with knowledge. Let's get out of this view of memory. So what do you think is making us be stuck culturally? Thank you, Magdalena, for your question. I think that we have a lot of difficulty to escape the way we view knowledge that we think is enough, is demanding. And I think that is the strongest epistemological obstacle that we have. And I dedicate to educational technology and all of this about knowledge built on educational technology. And from when we recognize the academic origin of the field in the decade of 1950, and I could close all my program in one course that is mandatory in the science of education, saying I'm going to replace everything, and if I don't enter to the century, So we need to focus seriously on saying, what are the current debates? What is emerging, and how can these debates, and they require to be connected with some pillars that our students need to understand. But to reach this, the path not only is transmission, repetition, application, verification. And a short story from pandemic, when we came into March 2020, we didn't know if the faculty was open, if we were able to give the courses in some kind of format, because it was not clear at that time. I spoke to my authorities and I said, can I start? And they said, here's the list of the emails of your students. I called my students up and we set up a first encounter where we said, what is the most serious technological, educational technology problem that the country has at this moment? And they said that the Ministry of Education probably doesn't know what to do. And we said, okay, well, let's talk with the Ministry of Education then. And let's ask to meet with the authorities of the Ministry of Education, and we are going to help to build a policy. And we talked, we discussed, and they said where we are, what were the first decisions, and they said, okay, give us 2 or 3 things that we can improve, and within 15 days we will come back with a proposal. And in those 15 days, my students, these books that I just quoted, they could say them by memory, because the challenge that they had was to go and build policy together with the authorities, not to learn those books and be able to see if you could repeat it. So today, those same students, I was telling Magdalena not long ago, when they had an exam that they had in a course that is not one of mine, and I know that they have a lot of load having to do with the bibliographics area. And I told them regarding the test, and I said, did you already study everything you need to know to be able to give this test? And they looked at me, and the students, splendid with their faces, like, what are you saying? And they said, we don't know, we have the podcasts. I said, that is great. The information is being podcasted. And he said, no, we got all the bibliographies. We carry out, we put it in AI, and we carry out a podcast. We don't read anymore. So that is the reproduction way that they have. So you insisted up till now. You have to study, you have to learn it, you have to do this, you have to do that, and now I'm saying I'm going to take it in the class, but you have to find a different way. And that path for me is the problem of the reality is that we have too many problems where we cannot resolve poverty, we cannot resolve, we have environmental crisis. It is a problem for all of the disciplines.
So why won't we approach that, which is the construction of the original, where we can't do any copies because it hasn't been solved before? Very deep what you say. And it is something that I see in all your reflections and your proposal of how to view your proposal. This idea of having more agency of the student in their learning curve, it's like a mixture between the AI, agency, and context that is part of what we want to work with the students. So, deepening in some of those ideas, if I'm a professor and I am going to propose some problems so that they can, is going to identify a problem and design a solution. What do they need to do so that agency is going to be developed, those skills that are going to make them put some distance between them and AI? I think this solution based in a problem found many limits because it was like a method. This is we are going to face the method from reality, and universities have a responsibility in transformation. We need to make a better society. I think that the first thing in terms of agency and returning on the idea of Jerome Brunner, I think the students can generate this, to have the conviction that you can face the minister and present a blueprint of a policy. I think that there needs to have many steps of design and redesign and discussions with many experts. And I think the presence of technology is great, because you're going to talk with Eve. And if I call Eve, I want you to tell this to my students, she is going to say yes, because that's how the knowledge world works. So we need to put this into different instances of evaluation. And Jenner Brunner says also that we need to put this public. This is not inside the classroom, it's towards the outside, because we need to make the educational activity explicit. We need to bring it out and show that it has a lot of power. We took some ideas of AI and aristocracy, and in a few months we made a book. We wouldn't, before you couldn't make a book in 1 month. We need to ask questions, do some successive approaches with AI, make it experts to evaluate and make it public, and it's going to be a public work. The students come out of that process transformed. They not only use AI, they are agents, they are creators of something that is original and that didn't exist before they did this, they studied this. This shouldn't be just for research teams. I'm a researcher, I need to make a contribution. But I think that in this situation in history, this time in history, we need to approach as researchers in classrooms. That's a very powerful idea. Sadly, we don't have enough time. We need to close. But I think that in a summary, you managed to say something that is very powerful with the method behind it. And I invite you to read Mariana's books, because there is a lot of pedagogy, a lot of instructional design behind of what she is proposing. And I think with this reflection of what's human, which is very important when we are facing this digitalization's context. A big round of applause for Mariana. Thank you, it was a pleasure. We thank Dr. Maggio for her interesting intervention, and also Magdalena Claro for commenting this talk. Next, the Professor Magdalena is going to give a present to Dr. Maggio. Thank you. Continuing with the program, next we are going to present a conference that's remote, and this one is titled How to Use the Artificial Intelligence to Improve Our Teaching. This conference is given by Dan Levy. He is a teacher of public policies of Harvard Kennedy School and a member of JPAL. He is PhD of Harvard, and he teaches in Harvard. He has led educational initiatives that are very innovative, like TechLead and Public Leadership Credential. Dr. Level is co-author of books about AI, including teaching in an effective way with ChatGPT, for example. And he has been consulting different institutions. His works combine analysis and learning at a global level. Professor Levy. Thank you. Can you listen? Okay. It's a pleasure and an honor to be with you, not physically, but virtually. I thank the Catholic University for this invitation, and I hope that these sessions are going to be as useful to you as possible. I'm going to share my screen, and I want to make sure that you can see my screen. Can you give me a sign? The idea of this session, as the moderator said, is how to use AI to improve our teaching. One of the things that I would like to say from the beginning is that the objective of the session, from my point of view, is to go further than what we can say in these few minutes together. I would like you to see the AI as two things. First, as a partner, a reflection partner, and second, an assistant for teaching, research, or in general. But it has two important characteristics. The first one is that it has endless patience. I don't know you, but I don't know human beings with endless patience. My house doesn't work like that. And second is that it's available for us 24/7. So this is the tool that we have that is available to us. But there isn't things as with any assistant. We need to check their work. We need to do feedback when we are not happy with the result. And we need to think in which tasks it's better to use it and which ones not. Because this is changing all the time. One of the things that I would like to tell you in terms of the agenda, a brief introduction, examples of the use of AI in teaching. If we have time, I would like to talk about the challenges to use AI in teaching, and then to end. I'm not there, so I don't know what's the background of the ones that are in the room. So could you answer this brief survey using your cell phones? How often do you use AI in general and to teach? To share, I would like everyone to be here. This is where you are. Very few people have never used it. And we have about 50% that uses maybe once a week or once a day. And for the next question, we are going to see that the format, the percentage of people that use it many times a day is about 20%. Of course, it's less people because this is specifically for teaching. To the ones that don't use daily this tool for teaching, is that you could consider possible uses to improve the quality of teaching. because we don't have a lot of time, this is useful to know where you are. These are my collaborators in the area of AI. I'm going to highlight Angela Perez. We wrote a book, and we had just translated it into Spanish. It's called How to Teach with ChatGPT. And it's some of the things that I'm going to show you today come from this book. So thank you, Angela, for this presentation. I would like to start with 4 key ideas for the use of generative AI in teaching. The first one is that we need to use AI to complement our skills. Maybe when we say we are going to use AI or not for teaching, we ask ourselves, is AI better than me? Better than me alone? And I don't think that's the right question. I think many times we're going to conclude that we can do it better than AI. Not necessarily we're going to be right, but as teachers, probably we are going to conclude that. I think the question is if AI plus me can do it better than me alone. And the answer many times is yes. We can do it better with AI. We can do the same things in less time, or many times we can do better things in less time than we used to take before. The second thing is that we are experts as professors, not only in what we are teaching, the subjects that we are teaching, but we are also experts in our students, how to get to them. So we shouldn't forget this. AI can be a co-pilot, but not the pilot of the vehicle. And third, you need to treat the AI as a person with whom you are talking. And Mariana was saying in her presentation, this is not Google. This is really a dialogue. If I don't like what I found, then I'm going to do another search. This is a constant dialogue, and I think you're going to see that in the examples that I'm going to show you. And also practice is key, as in any other skill. I would like to say an example that was my first aha moment with the AI. It happened 2 years ago, and AI has evolved a lot during that time. But I still think that that was the moment where I thought something has changed. While I'm showing this with this example, I would like you to have the opportunity to reflect what has been your aha moment with AI. And that moment happened for me when I was trying to prepare a new class for a course in the university in Harvard Kennedy School that is called Thinking Analytically in an Uncertain World. And I wanted to incorporate an example at the beginning of the course of a political decision that would be benefited by an analytical focus because of the course. And after reading this book from Graham Allison, I decided to focus on the decisions of Kennedy president during the crisis of the missiles in Cuba. Graham Allison is a professor in my university, ex-dean of my school, and I had read the book and I thought, this is an excellent illustration, and because our university is called Harvard Kennedy School, I thought it was good to focus on this. But apart from the book, I didn't have a lot of information about the crisis of the missiles in Cuba. So I went to ChatGPT to look for some help. And this is the prompt, the initial prompt. It's a little long, but it's not exaggerated. I'm going to break the prompt in 3 parts. The first part, and look, only the things that, focus on the things that are highlighted. The context, this is like formula. The context here is I'm teaching a course, and the objective of the course is this one, so that AI is going to know what they need to know to help me. The second part are the instructions, what I need help on. I need an example to start the course about the President Kennedy, about the crisis in Cuba, and I would like to show these concepts. And third, this is the task. What is that I want the AI to do? So please, can you create a plan for a class of 60 minutes? Please recommend resources or what I should read or see to prepare for this class. I divide it in 3 because we have a lot of experience writing prompts, but the quality of prompts is not so important as 2 years ago. It is still something important. And because of that, this formula has been very useful when I write any type of quality. One is the task that I would like ChatGPT to do, instructions, how you want it to be done, and the context. What do you want ChatGPT to know so that they can do the job for you? For the ones that are starting to use artificial intelligence, I think this is a good way to remember.
I'm going to briefly give you the answer from ChatGPT. It was in English. I'm going to narrate it. But so you have an idea, maybe nowadays it's not an aha moment for you, but it was a moment where I said, wow, this completely changes things. So here is the prompt that I placed, and once I gave the prompt, it said here they are, 60 minutes, and it divides the class of active learning. There are certain sessions. It gives me books, it gives me videos, and one of the books that it identifies is that important book that I told you. And then I said, what are the decisions that Kennedy took? And it tells me these are the decisions. These are the possible options. Can you tell me a little bit more regarding the bias of the group where this discussion was presented? Can you give me a list of biases? Can you share that and compare it with the crisis of Bahia, of the cochinos, and it tells me the things that had been the same or different. I cannot see you, so I don't know if this is surprising for you or not, but for me this was completely surprising when I carried it out at that time. And I would like to clarify that I didn't grab that plan and go to the classroom, but this plan was useful for me. At the beginning, as I said, there's 2 objectives. One of them is the use of AI and the other one is a reflection that is basically a partner in reflection. So in a space of 2-3 weeks, I was able to share with AI as I would have done with a colleague. So you can have an idea. This is Graham Allison, who wrote the book. He is considered an expert in the missiles, world expert in the crisis of the missiles in Cuba. So I sent this to him, and I said, do you think that what ChatGPT answered is okay? And he said, this is what I would expect. This is an answer I would expect from a great research assistant. So this was very revealing for me. I was telling you before that you can use AI also as an assistant. And now I would like to illustrate some additional things that can be carried out in a dialogue like this one. So here you can see there is some logistical help. In this case, I said, please, could you give me the decisions that you mentioned in a table and add additional columns of the advantages and disadvantages of each option. And that is what it did in just seconds. And then I said, help me generate a question for the exit ticket so we can know what the students learned at the end of the class. So I said, please suggest an exit ticket regarding these dimensions in particular. It gave me a few ideas. We were exchanging, and that's why I'm saying it's like a coworker, a reflection coworker. And it says, I love that you have given me the poll, but I would like for the students to fill it out electronically. So could you help me create a Google form? And I said, sure, I can help you. And it said, well, you have to place this code in Google Apps that you have. So I can say, I'm not a programmer. That black square that you see on the right, I have no idea what is written there. However, I followed the instructions that are on the left. And what happened was that 3 minutes later, I had the questions that I had in a Google form, which I could give to the students. And then when I was about to leave the classroom, I said it would be better if instead of telling the students go to this place, if I could give them a QR code so that the students could fill the survey or the poll more quickly. And I said, give me a QR code. And that is what happened. So in just minutes, I was able to do something that would have taken a lot more time before. In the space of time that we have, obviously there's a limit to how many examples I can share. But in the book, we describe of how to prepare a new class, how to improve one that already exists, how to design work that our students carry out before the class, and how to give a class within the classroom, how we can use AI, how we can design and qualify tasks and exams, and grade tasks and exams. And this is an example that I would also like to give. I don't know if for all of you this exists, but in the university where I am, we carry out assessments of the different courses. The students have to fill one out at the end of the class. And one of the things that we can do is ask AI to help us summarize. And in this case, we said, give me 3 things that are effective, that are not as effective. And give me 3 things that are effective, some 3 that are not so effective. And I was able to see it, and many times I see it with much detail, and it was very useful. I would like to spend a few minutes with the use of other tools. And there are many other tools, and Mariana mentioned, for example, the idea of the podcasts that their students used in the classroom. I also, in some occasions, to give them an additional format where they can consume, to tell, I still ask the students to read, as Mariana says that is completely out of our control, but in some occasions, I asked them to do something else. And here we have, I don't know if you're going to hear it, so I'm going to ask someone in the room to tell me if you can hear this or not. But here is another example. Is a translation. I do not speak Chinese Mandarin. And for me, this is an avatar. This is not me. I do not speak Chinese. And these are tools that exist nowadays to be able to translate and to be able to create avatars that speak in the language, in our language. So this is a little bit where things are headed. So much so that there are some professors who set up a clone of himself where basically his students can contact this clone by text, post, or video, And he trained that clone with everything that he has written throughout his whole life. And it is a very dedicated professor. It's not that he wants to avoid contact with his students. He just basically says, I am going to make my days to be more productive because the students have access to me 24 hours a day. And they use this as a before or outside of working hours. Here there's another idea. This is my colleague who is developing a way of teaching. And I would like to present him here, but basically what it is a tool. He has an avatar that speaks with the content and the slides. So this may seem like something crazy, but this is something that is possible nowadays. Let me see if it works. 1 second.
In this unit, we're going to dig deeper into how LLMs work. Specifically, we'll be talking
Específicamente
about
vamos a hablar
post-training.
acerca
As a
de
reminder,
post-entrenar
this lecture is
y como
fully delivered.
recordatorio, esta es una clase, this is a class where he's not saying the words, but the colleague I am speaking with weekly, it looks just like him, but there is a student can come up and ask him a question, and it is an AI that is trained with his voice and with his content can answer the question. So these are things that were not possible before and nowadays are being possible. So we also have 6 minutes left, so it's not much time, but maybe to illustrate one of the possible uses of AI, I would like to ask you to please tell me what is the main challenge that you face to be able to use AI in teaching. So if you can use this QR code, and in a minute we are going to see. I can see the answers are coming in. Okay. I would think that some of you are still doing this, but I will comment a little bit the summary of what is being said by you. This is a tool that was developed by a student from Chile. Gonzalo Jara is his name, and it is a tool that is developed, and here is a summary of the main ideas that you carried out. So think about the use of a classroom, for example, access to technology and knowledge. This is something that I would not have imagined was one of the main challenges that you confront or deal with. If we have more time, we could talk about this. But in the interest of ending so that the other speakers can also continue, I'm going to jump over other things that this tool does. For example, in this case, Viviana says to be able to accomplish that all of the students can access the same level of reading comprehension and equity in technology. And we would have had a conversation in the classroom if this would have been in person. And in such a way that in terms of conclusions, these are the main messages that I would like to leave with you. To use AI and teaching is not just AI plus me. It is not if AI is better than me. If AI plus me is better than just me. You are the expert. Treat AI as a colleague of conversation, and practice is key. And as I mentioned before, we have this additional resource. If you are interested, this is available in Amazon, and here is the QR code in case you would like to acquire it. Even if you don't want to acquire it, there is a website that has resources in the prompts that are in the book and things like that. So therefore, you are very welcome to purchase that and to have a benefit from what the book has. So I have been asked to finish at 3:35, and it's 3:33, so I'm going to end with just a thank you very much. I don't know if the moderator or somebody else is going to take over now. Thank you. Thank you very much for your conference and for your time. We are very thankful. It is now 3:33, as Professor said, and now I would like to invite you to review the program that you have in your QR of your credential, and that you can go to the different rooms that corresponds according to the choice you have made. This will go from 3:30 until 5:40. At 5:40, we would like to invite you to have a coffee so that then we can come to the closing of the day. Thank you very much.